Hey there, welcome back to another really great episode. Today we got a really neat one for you. We're actually running a new paging system out here for our largest customer at the auto auction here. So what we'll be able to do is actually have everything tied into their voice over IP phones inside, and we'll be able to broadcast a message out here, even have a recording play out here. So if they do want to let customers know that it's auction time or if viewing's over, they can always hear it out here as well as inside. So it's a really great project. Stick along. We're actually going to take all of this 14.2 wire that we got from Windy City Wire, who is our preferred wire vendor when it comes to anything we buy wire-wise. We're gonna bring it along our tension lines that we've put in here for our cameras, keep taking that all the way inside the building, tied into our Bogan amplifier, put in our Bogan horns, which is a full, true 70-volt system, and go from there. So stick along and watch us as we get this one done. We got our brand new spool of 14.2 direct burial outdoor rated wire here from Windy City Wire. And we love how their spool design is, since it's a spool in-box concept. So super easy to pull. That's why we're actually gonna start pulling from our farthest location into there so we can just ride it all the way back with the lift here. We're actually also running a new fiber line to this box as well to allow our redundancy to work with our antennas that we actually have positioned out here. But we actually used 1/2-inch thick aircraft grade cable with plastic sheathing on it to make sure that our wires did not get damaged as they were up here. And this was kind of just the only way to get cameras to multiple of these poles without actually trenching and bringing up all the different conduit that we have. So aerial is a great way to achieve connectivity if you don't have any other way, and if you already have the light pole set up. Before, it was really just a large mess of wires, and we really changed a lot of it so that it was actually put together correctly and made sure that it, worked properly. Now we just have to staple back about 1,000 feet or so, or zip tie back. I think the biggest issue we're gonna run into is it tangling up here. I also want to mention that this lift for 24 hours was $980, which I think is just absurd. Shout out to United Rentals for that one. Like, I'm good with like $400 or $500 for the day. Like, I kind of get that, but their location is literally right on the other side of that tower over there. And they charged me $300 to pick up and deliver, to go like 2 miles. I'm like, well, I didn't ask you to go to Alaska. So as I'm up here, I'm pretty much zip tying about every foot to every 1.5 feet. These are UV rated zip ties, so they are meant to be outdoors. So for anybody saying that we didn't use that, we did use that. But just like anything, everything gets old, and there's really not many other ways to affix wires to this. The metal clamps, the hose clamps, unfortunately they can dig into the wire, rust on the wire, so we don't use them. We've just found that zip ties work best, and we get a lot of years out of them. But it's always good, to regularly service your lines. So I'd say if you put these up, maybe service them every 3 to 5 years, depending on how the cabling looks and whatnot. But this is all Windy City Wire too under here. It's all their gel-filled waterproof cable, so it's great cable. I hate working with the jelly, but I will say it does keep the water out. It does what it's intended to do. Thankfully, it's not too busy now because they had an auction yesterday, so a lot of the cars are out of the way. Makes our life a little bit easier. The weather is beautiful. I picked the nicest day we've had thus far to do this job, so I'm happy about it. I love Windy City Wire. I know I keep saying it, we're not even, we have no sponsorship by them or anything, but the wire is just so efficient to pull, and it's such an efficient movement instead of the boxes that you constantly have to keep tugging on and tugging on. Then they get tangled inside. I've never had a tangle with any of my Windy City Wire. I really never have. Just call me a fanboy, but I've used all the wires out there from Genesis to, even Southwire's brand and, pretty much everybody's. Yeah, no, it's, totally. I got a great guy there, Ryan. Another shout out to Ryan. Great products. It's funny, I got signed up with them so long ago, and I'm trying to spec them for every job because you just use the old pull boxes and there's just such failures. Like the Genesis wire wire. There's so much tangling. There's so much, it's such a nuisance time waster. And you pull a lot of wire. They make really neat carts, which I actually have one of the carts, which is really nice because you can either hold 2 of these larger style boxes or 3 cat boxes. Even the thinner boxes you can hold more of. But I'll tell you, really, for pulling efficiency, it's much easier off of a spool than out of like a basket of cables like the other guys do. So Windy City Wire for the win. That was my short plug to Windy City Wire. But if you want the best, just buy from them. I'll leave it at that. If you want the most expensive lift, go to United Rentals. I don't know if Windy City Wire makes fiber yet, but yeah, I mean, if they do, I would totally buy that too. And the wire that we're dropping is just old fiber. It's just glass. It doesn't do any damage to anything on the ground. We are not even done like the first, I mean, we're almost there. It's not a fast process. You know, you want to do it right. You really don't want the cables coming down. Probably about 1,000 zip ties later, and we'll be done. So as we get the wires to the building, the fiber optic cable will actually go to our IDF rooms. So we have 3 IDFs throughout the building. So this will hit our closest one. This is just a redundant link. We actually run a lot of the things over radio, and this is now our redundant link. If radio does go down, we have another way of actually communicating with our devices. So it's really just a redundancy layer, but I figured we're up here. Fiber is not that expensive, so we might as well run it. But as soon as it gets into the building, like I said, the fiber will go to the IDF, and then the 14.2 will go to the server room that's inside the building. That is their corporate server room, and then that will plug into the Bogan amplifier that's going to then plug into, I don't really know who makes their phone system. We're pretty much installing 95%. The other 5% is coming from the phone company. So they have to then integrate it with their system. So they ordered I guess an audio interface that converts the voice over IP signal to a RCA connection. That plugs into our Bogan, and then the Bogan knows that, you know, it just stays on and they just page through it. So fairly simple. That was our first bag of zip ties gone. Moving on to our second. We're gonna need to make a ADI trip soon. Maybe we can introduce you to everybody at ADI today. Either that or Alarmax. Well, we have to go to ADI. So I figured we'd bring you up here and kind of show you exactly what we're doing. So like I said, I'm tying this every foot here. So you can see our fibers on the bottom, and there is still some slack with the fiber. It is armored fiber, so I'm not really concerned about that it's rubbing up against these cables, but you can see there is still some slack. So it does have some movement and some play. And then we just keep going like this, and I would say we're about halfway done so far. So hopefully we can get the full way and then get our horns up. This audio is pretty much going to be horrible. There's so much wind up here. We finally made it to the building about 400 zip ties later. Now we're ready to actually go through one of our penetrations, get our wire in, and get everything terminated inside. All right, so finally now we're getting to the good stuff. So we actually just picked up our horns from our guys over at ADI. These are Bogan 70 volt, 30 watt horns. So they're about 10 inches in diameter. So we're actually gonna position one on this pole. It's gonna broadcast this way. We have one on the building that's already broadcasting about this amount. And then we actually have 2 more down on our last pole down there that are gonna swoop each way so that we get proactive coverage when it comes to sound. What's nice about this is they're gonna be able to talk over their VoIP phones that they already have in their offices, but we're even gonna try and get a custom message to play through every 25 minutes for them too. So it's a great thing. So stick around, we'll get all these installed, and then we'll show you the finished product. Just using Tech screws to affix this to the pole. It's a metal pole, so 3 Tech screws is perfect. And what you can see is I left a loop here. So what we'll actually do is we'll bring it into a box, and then we'll just make our connection inside the box and drag down one line just for that. A little bit of overcomplication, but I'd rather all my wire nutted connections be sealed and secured rather than just out in the open. So I always keep 3-hole electrical junction boxes on the truck, and then I always end up using them. And you are supposed to use the tabs with them, but since we're not doing any line voltage, we'll just mount them the way that we see fit here. Then we're actually gonna take our compression gland, which is a plastic piece here. That's gonna screw into our 1/2-inch threads up top. It's gonna create a watertight seal against these 2 wires that are gonna go in and plug in. Okay, so both of our glands are in and out. Now we're gonna take our wire here, which I left specifically this long for a reason. I'm actually gonna cut it. And then now what I'll do is I'll bring this in. Up here, I'll give you a little bird's eye view of what's going on. So here's our Bogan horn. On our back there, we actually just set our tap to the full 30-watt potential of this horn. We have our exterior cable going into a box right here. And then inside the box, you can see that this is our to and this is our from. And then that goes into its Titan compression gland here. So it's a nice waterproof seal into the box. We have all of our things tied together here. So we used our wire nuts here. And since this is an exterior rated box and everything's closed, we did use not gel sealed wire nuts, but just the regular wire nuts, and that just goes into our speaker there. So mounted onto there with our tech screws. Simple little thing, and now we just gotta go to the next one. Alrighty, here's our 2-horn setup. You can see inside there, we have our ring terminals. We set our knob to exactly where it needs to be. They both go into this waterproof junction box, and then the wire goes back up and follows all the way along to the building. So like I said, these are tapped at 30 watts a piece. That one's tapped at 30 watts down there, and we are ready to go. The only thing we're waiting on is the VoIP appliance that we need from the IT company in order to get this running. So unfortunately, we won't have a full test for you today, but we'll keep you updated on it and post something on our Instagram when we do have this full system up and running. But each of these speakers here are tapped at 30 watts. So that means we have 90 watts of power coming out here, and we have 150 watt amps. So we do have some good headroom. If we did need to add a couple speakers, we definitely could, and just change our wattage on these horns as we see fit. But all metal construction, they've been the same way since they started designing them in the 80s. So, you know, they're pretty much the same thing that you'd get. They're very basic. They're not great for music, but they are great for paging systems and pretty much a staple in that environment. So we're good for the day.